Greetings. This video is coming to you from the main engineering room at Lee University. And that reflects some changes that have taken place since my last video, and I apologize for the lack of uploading of those. But I have been very busy the last several months because starting in August, I started to teach engineering at Lee University. I've been doing so at UTC for a long time, and those of you who follow this channel are aware of the fact that most of my lecture videos and my lab videos are all on this channel. So with that, some people will ask, well, why did you give up courses like soil mechanics and foundations to teach statics? Well, that's a good question. And it comes from two of my convictions. And one of them, of course, is I'm a very serious Christian. And the second is that I am very serious about engineering education. And have gotten more so the years I have been doing it. And with that, Lee started an engineering program a few years back. And so they asked me to start teaching here, and I started to teach here. It's sort of a ground up, but I'm helping them also developing their engineering curriculum as well. I think that engineering education at Christian University is a win-win situation. It's a win for the students. It's a win for the university. It's a win for the church. It's a win for the engineering profession. I believe all need each other. And I've noted the passing on my websites of Christians who have been very well known in the geotech field. And I think that it's important that this continue. And so I don't want to go into lengthy because we get into the other things, but I wanted to say that. The second thing that happened was about last month, this channel was demonetized. It was demonetized because, as YouTube explained to me, the channel has too much content which comes from somewhere else. And it does have content that comes from somewhere else. It has content from somewhere else that is either not easily available, or it is not available at all somewhere else. And much of it has been gone back a long ways. And, and some of it has been claimed by its copyright holders, and they're getting monetized off, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons why I moved to YouTube to start with, is so that they would have a chance. Well, it's not the first time it was demonetized. It was demonetized a few years ago when they changed the rules on how many visitors you had to have, how many hits you had, views you had to have, and all this, and subscribers before they would monetize it. And to be real honest, monetization of this video was as my grandmother from New Orleans would say, a lagniappe. And it was just a little something extra. Well, I'm good with that. It was good while it lasted, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think monetization on YouTube in general is getting harder and harder. And so I'm just as glad to get out of the rat race and get back into doing what I like to do, which is to teach and to inspire. So with that, we can move to our present subject. Our present subject is an engineering subject. We have, I'm going to look at two devices which are no longer in use. Well, they may be used somewhere in the world, but they're generally not in use by engineers, and engineers have found them useful for their practice. One of them is a planimeter. One of the planimeters goes back a long, long ways. And the other one is a slide rule, which engineers used to be associated with very much. And so we're going to look at both of these. We're going to use both of them. This is not a detailed video into the theory behind them. This is just to show you what they look like in action and how useful they actually were in some of their basic operations. We're not going to get a lot of fancy stuff. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at these devices, and then we're going to get into using them. Let's begin by introducing you to the devices we're going to be using today. This one here on the upper left is a planimeter from the late 19th century. It was made by the American Steam Gauge Company in Boston. It was my great-grandfather's, and he probably used it in his design of steam yachts. And as far as the steam is concerned, one of the main uses for planimeters back in the day was the indicator card. Indicator card is, for those of you who are familiar, gives you a pressure distance, basically, plot of the entire steam cycle. And the entire steam cycle is shown. You take that area, you can find out what your output of your steam engine is. This is a very common use, but also he probably used it in his calculations of volumes and shapes and whatnot, because real ships have a fairly complicated hull structure to them. So he used it for that too, probably. Over on the right here, we have a more contemporary one, probably from the 1960s. It was made by the Los Angeles Scientific Instrument Company, which was interesting because my great-grandfather's brother lived in LA for a long time and actually died there. But that was long before this came along. The planimeter is more of a quote-unquote modern, more like you saw in the 60s and the 70s. My family business had one which was similar to this, and it has more features. For example, the one on the left only has one wheel, which records the area, whereas this one has not just the one for one wheel, but you can actually go 2, 3, for example, if it goes from 1 and around once, it records how many revolutions it makes, and you can see the volume. We're probably not going to get that far into that because we want to compare it to the old one. And there on the bottom is a slide rule. It is, engineers back in the 60s and the 70s were famous for their white shirts, crew cut haircuts, and their pocket protectors. Well, and their slide rules. But most slide rules are about 1 foot or 30 centimeters long, and they don't go very well in a pocket, in a shirt pocket. But with this one, you actually had one that could go in a shirt pocket and could find its way into your pocket protector. It doesn't really need one because it's got its own little leather case. It was made by Hemmi in Japan, who made excellent slide rules. The only problem they ran into back in the 60s, early 60s and throughout the 60s, the Japanese didn't have a reputation for good quality stuff. So they would private label these things for people like K&E and those people, but they were still a Japanese product. And it is an excellent quality. It's nice bamboo construction. It's everything you would have in a large slide rule, but you need a small one. And that limits the amount of things it can do. It's primarily uses for multiplication and division, which is what we're going to demonstrate today. Now we're going to start with the planimeter test. We're going to use a test square. That test square is 4 square inches, 2 inches to the side. That was no mean feat to draw that because I introduced CAD to my family business in the late 1980s and I've been disposing of my drafting equipment ever since, but I had enough where I could do that. So with that in mind, the way this works is this. We start here. This is at right angles to that. And we're going to trace this around the perimeter of that square. And as that happens, this wheel is going to turn and give us a result. So, which should be the same as this because it's a 1-to-1 scale. So we're going to go ahead and get started and move this around. As you see, my planimetry is not what it used to be, and it wasn't much to start with. We stop there, and we look at the planimeter, and it's pretty much right on the money at 4. It may be a little difference. I'm going to try to take a picture of it. That won't be easy because of the lighting and whatnot, and because of the tarnished nature, but it's just about at 4 square inches. Now we're going to do the Lasico. You'll see the Lasico has several improvements. One of them, of course, is this wheel right here, which allows multiple revolutions of the main wheel, which is actually dragging on the surface. And therefore you could use larger areas. Obviously it's a bigger machine than the other one was. You also have it where instead of you having to hold the point directly, you can actually grab onto this there, which is what I'm going to try to do. And you can then see your tracing a little bit easier. So we'll see if this gets any better. Actually, it's not, to be honest with you. I find this more difficult to move around accurately than the other one. Some of that may have to do with my sorry technique, but the other part of it is I think the other one, the wheel and whatnot glowed or glided more smoothly on the paper here than this one does. Then we come up. There, we'll stop there. And we look at our results. And actually it's not quite there. The result of this is about 3.8. Now you ask, why is it off? Well, it may be, it may not be. It may be a scaling issue. I attempted to set up this particular planimeter so that it would not, so that it would scale properly, and at least I tried to restore it to the factory settings. So what I'm going to do with this is, assuming that it's a scaling error and not one of either my poor performance, which may also be a problem, we can actually do, and I'm not sure it's really needed in this case, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to take a leaf from McCormack Surveying and basically do a scale factor with this particular planimeter. And we're going to use the slide rule to make it happen. My first move was to put 4 on the A scale, and the second thing on the B scale, I'm going to divide it by 3.8, which is what you're looking at there. Now I move the cursor down to the end, and I end up from the A scale getting 0.95 as my scale factor. All right, this is a drawing, a little more complicated than the other one, of an underwater pile hammer that Vulcan proposed to its customers in the late 1960s. Vulcan never developed an underwater pile hammer. Some of the problems were at Vulcan's, and some of the problems were in the market it was selling into. So between the two of them, this never saw the light of day. In any event, we're going to actually take the area of this quarter section right here, where you see the hatching up to this point here and across these lines there, and we're going to take out the area of this, and then we will have to do some adjustments, but we're going to talk about that in just a minute, because obviously, unlike the other one, this is not the full scale, and there is where the slide rule will be very useful. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get going with this. And again, we have to, one thing I've tried to avoid is the planimeter going off of the paper. In other words, going from the paper, say, to that yellow background. We try to avoid, or from the yellow background to the table that they're all taped to, and we get to that. The result of that shows that that area is about 3.5 square inches. That's in real units. We'll get to the how we get it up to the scale in a minute. Now we're going to change gears a little bit and take the area of this void. And here we go. We start here, we trace it this way, around this corner. The fillets obviously can be done by hand, but this whole thing could be done by hand, but we didn't. Okay, we stop there. With that, now we got the Lasico, it's set up. We're going to start working it this way. And we got this problem. Okay, and we ended up with just about four square inches unadjusted. Now we do the Lasico in the inner void, and we just take it, we've readjusted it, reset it to 0 and all that good stuff. So we come around. And we check, and it has about a 0.4. And we'll make those adjustments by dividing both of those using the slide rule. The slide rule basically says 4.25. And actually, since it will actually 0.425, for the void on the Lasico, because it's 4 and 0.4, so 4.25 is going to be 0.425. One of the things that is necessary with slide with in the old days is to know how to shift your decimal point around properly in your head, because the slide rule helped you, but ultimately it was you that had to keep up with the powers of 10. The drawing originally was drawn at 3/4 of an inch to a foot. Now, I went through some long addition and multiplication to come up with the fact that basically 1 inch is equal to 16 inches. And that means, however, that's for length, but that doesn't solve our area. The slide rule there shows you that I have multiplied 1.6 by 1.6 again on the A and the B scales, and I get about what looks to be 255. Well, 16 squared is 256. So now let's first, now that we've gotten the scale factor established with reality, let's go ahead and find out the net area of the shaded area, which we determined the scaled area of. So let's start with this. The scaled area of the American steam gauge is 3.5 minus 0.75 or 2.75, and the Lasico at 4.25 minus 0.425 or 3.825. So we've got a fairly wide divergence of results between the two, and so we have to figure out what's going on here. What I think is going on is this, is that the Lasico, I had to do a lot of cleaning up on. First of all, my technique is not the greatest, and it's worse with the Lasico than it is with the ASG, which is something you can see in the video. But the other thing is that the Lasico had a lot of cleaning, and I'm not sure whether that process is as complete as it should be. I'm not a planimeter repairman, so, but you can see how it's done, but I'm not sure whether the results are particularly inspiring. So with that, we can proceed to multiply the results by 256 or 255, however you want to do it, square inches to come up with a result. So the ASG values, or the American steam gauge values, will be as follows. The American steam gauge results basically is 2.75 times 255 or 256, comes out to about 700 square inches. The Lasico's results, 3.825 by 255 or 256, results in about 900 square inches. The obvious question is, which one is closer? With this irregular of a shape, that is difficult, but we're going to try using the slide rule. Let me try to summarize the calculations. And what I did, I took the area here, then around, and well, I actually took it out to here and then down. And I did not try to estimate the area of that. I wanted that area. So basically what I did is I started with a quarter area here, which is actually pi r squared over, which is actually pi r squared over 4, the quarter area. The diameter of that is 50 inches from another part of the drawing, and so that reduces that to 25 diameter, and you multiply all that out, you get about, and I use the slide rule, 510 inches squared. I'm showing you the slide rule part of that is really intriguing. This slide rule has a place for pi on it, and that's what I use. It makes it a lot easier to find it when you're doing area and volume calculations on circular stuff. From there, we took the estimate, so the area of that area is 510 inches, this area right here, which comes out. And then this square area, 38 by 38, is comes out to about 1,440 on the slide rule, exactly as 1,444. So with that, we subtracted the two, we get an area of this square, subtracted this circle is about 930. If you scale up the results of both of each of the planimeters without this, with the American steam gauge, you get 910, which is fairly close, and the Lasico is 1090, which is a little bit off. It's, and that is the result, which the correction factor which we developed for the Lasico to start with. So the American steam gauge came out better. And again, my comments about the condition of the Lasico, it probably needs some more cleanup and probably needs a better calibration than the one we gave it. The calibration that McCormack recommends is nice if you're not really sure how. I think a good, it has let me just show it to you. It has an adjustment there, which it can be used to adjust the length of that arm, which in turn adjusts the scaling of the machine. And that's primarily used good for civil applications where you have maps and whatnot. In fact, the thing that got me interested in the planimeter was about 50 years ago, I was visiting a friend of mine in northern Louisiana with a farm, and he wanted to find the areas of some of his fields and everything overall. I was using triangle rule, but he suggested to be faster with the planimeter. In retrospect, I was probably better off sticking with the triangles because the property allowed that to happen. A lot of triangles, but it still worked out better. And I had an HB 35 at the time, which made it even better. Nevertheless, all the calculations you see were done on the slide rule or by just straight up hand multiplication and addition. The slide rule view you see there shows the pi, which is actually computing the area of this area right here. I'll get this out, right? This area right here. This area, the pi is very handy on the slide rule and was very useful in getting results. But like I said, except for whatever hand multiplication and addition I did, which I used actually most of it to check the slide rule on the squares and that sort of thing, the results are pretty much the same as, were pretty much the same in both of them, within a decimal point. So the slide rule was very, very useful. I probably would have done better if I had had some more practice with it. One of the obstacles I had with the Hemmi slide rule is that the instructions were thoughtfully delivered to the United States in Japanese. I think some time with Google Glass will probably fix that problem. So that, in a nutshell, is pretty much showing you the slide rule and the planimeter in real applications. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I enjoyed getting into this stuff which I have not used in a long time, and hopefully it'll give you a better appreciation of how things were done in the past. It's really, in retrospect, it is amazing how many things were done, including maybe the bridges and the industrial products and the even going to the moon were done with technology which we consider primitive today. So we need to stop and think about it. It's also interesting that many of the older techniques did not have the precision that we are used to now, but their accuracy, because of the people who were doing them and the application of engineering principles, were sound. So until the next time, thanks for watching, and God bless.